Imagine you are standing at the edge of a 300-foot cliff. Below you is nothing. Just a river gorge so deep that you cannot see the water. Just wind that hits your chest like a fist. Just empty air between you and death. And you take one more step forward anyway. Not because someone is forcing you. Not because you have no choice. Because this is what your grandfather did. And his grandfather before him. And every man in your family going back further than anyone can remember. Further than written history goes in this part of the world. You do it because the cliff owes you something. And because something inside that cliff has been waiting. Now here is the part that nobody tells you in the documentaries. The honey is real. The danger is real. The 9,000-year-old tradition is real. But the honey is not the only thing these men find up there. Inside those same cliffs carved into the same rock, faces these hunters climb past every single season, there are rooms, corridors, structures cut so deep into the stone that researchers cannot agree on who built them, when they were built, or what they were actually used for. And the hunters who pass these structures twice every year, they will not talk about them. Not easily. Not to outsiders. Not without going very quiet first. That silence is what this video is about. Stay with me. Because what hides inside these cliffs will change the way you see this place forever. There is a honey in this world that can make you hallucinate. It slows your heart. It drops your blood pressure. In high doses it puts you in a state that sits somewhere between drunk and completely lost. This is not a legend. This is pharmacology. The Himalayan cliff bee Apis dorsata laboriosa, the largest honeybee on Earth, builds its nests in the cliff faces of Nepal's Mustang region. These bees feed on rhododendron flowers. Rhododendron flowers contain compounds called granotoxins. When those compounds concentrate inside the honey, they produce effects that have been documented across centuries and across civilizations. The ancient Greeks wrote about it. Roman soldiers collapsed after eating honey near the Black Sea. Xenophon recorded thousands of his troops falling to the ground unable to stand, unable to fight from a single exposure to this kind of honey. This is called mad honey, and the Gurung people of the Mustang region have been harvesting it for over 9,000 years. They use it as medicine, for hypertension, for certain kinds of pain, for conditions that their traditional knowledge identified long before modern pharmacology had words for them. And in recent decades, outsiders have been willing to pay serious money for it. But to get it, someone has to climb the cliff. Twice a year. Spring and autumn. The hunters gather at the base of cliffs that drop straight into river gorges. There is no safety equipment in the modern sense. No harnesses. No anchor systems that a professional climber would recognize. There are handmade rope ladders woven from plant fiber. There are long bamboo poles used to raise those ladders up to the nest level. And there is a smoke pot burning dried grass to sedate the bees long enough for the hunter to work. But before any of that, before the first rope goes up, the lead hunter performs a ritual, an offering to the cliff. Not to the bees, not to the honey, to the cliff itself, to whatever the cliff contains. This ritual is not optional. It has never been optional. In communities where the practice has continued unbroken for generations, no hunter goes up without it. The elder hunters say that to skip it is not just disrespectful, it is dangerous, in a way that has nothing to do with bees or rope ladders. We will come back to that. If you already find this strange, good. Keep watching, because it gets much stranger. After the ritual, the hunter climbs. He cuts the honeycomb, it drops into his basket. He works fast. The smoke fades. The bees, enormous, aggressive, loud, begin to recover. The rope swings. The gorge sits 300 feet below him. The BBC filmed this. National Geographic filmed this. The footage went around the world. Everyone watched the hunter. Nobody looked at what was directly behind him. The Mustang region was once the ancient kingdom of Low. Upper Mustang was closed to foreign visitors until 1992. Before the restrictions, it was remote enough that outside influence stayed minimal for centuries, which means what survived here survived untouched. And what survived inside these cliffs is one of the most significant and least understood archaeological discoveries in South Asia. Cut into the same cliff faces where the bees nest and the hunters climb there are thousands of man-made caves. Not natural hollows, not random erosion patterns, carved rooms with doorways, connecting corridors, ventilation holes positioned with clear intention, walls that were once plastered smooth and painted in colors that in some chambers still hold today. Some of these structures are over 3,000 years old. Some may be older. The dating is complicated because multiple groups used the same spaces across multiple centuries, carved by one people, reused by another, reused again by another after that. Some caves were homes. Some were storage. Some became monasteries with Buddhist murals from the 10th and 11th centuries, so well preserved by the dry altitude that researchers wept when they first saw them. But some caves contain things that the published research has not been able to fully explain. And those are the caves the hunters do not discuss. In 2008, a research team entered caves in the Mustang Cliff system and documented something that shifted the entire academic conversation about this region. Human remains, not scattered, not accidental. Dozens of bodies in some caves. In others, hundreds of skeletal remains, deliberately arranged. Skulls, long bones, grave goods placed with clear intention, wooden objects, textiles, jewelry spanning multiple centuries of use. These caves had been used as charnel houses, as places where communities kept their dead. The Gurung elders knew this. The hunters knew this. It was part of their oral tradition. But the scale of it, the number of individuals, the span of time was not something the academic record had prepared for. And then, the researchers looked more carefully at the objects left with the dead. What they found did not match. Materials that would have required long-distance trade to obtain. Design elements that paralleled cultures hundreds of miles away. Objects that suggested the people who used these caves were connected to networks that moved goods and possibly knowledge across mountain ranges that history had always assumed were simply barriers to movement. These caves were not just burial sites. They were endpoints, markers on routes, stations along passages through the Himalayas that carried things the official historical record had not accounted for. Ask yourself this: if basic burial caves revealed all of this, what do the caves the hunters refuse to discuss contain? Here is the detail that changes everything once you notice it. Researchers who spent extended time with Gurung communities documented the specific language of the pre-harvest ritual, the offering made before every single climb. That ritual does not address the cliff generally. It addresses what is inside the cliff specifically. The language references presences, occupants, something with prior claim to the cliff face that must be approached with permission. The words distinguish between different parts of the cliff. Some sections require more careful address than others. Some require a longer offering. Some require the senior hunter to speak alone. This is not generic spiritual practice applied to a landscape. This is inherited information encoded in ritual form. Information about specific caves, specific contents, specific reasons why certain sections of the cliff are treated differently from others. The hunters know what is in those caves. Their ritual language proves they know. And when outside researchers have asked directly which caves, what is inside them, the response is always the same. A pause, a change of subject, or just silence. And here is the part that matters most: this silence is consistent across different families, different villages, different communities within the region who have no organized reason to coordinate what they say to outsiders. Consistent silence across unconnected people about specific locations is not cultural shyness. It is protection. Deliberate, generational, organized protection of something specific. There is a geographical fact about Mustang that the honey hunting documentaries almost never mention. The Kali Gandaki Gorge, the deepest gorge on Earth, runs directly through the Mustang region. It is a natural corridor connecting the Tibetan Plateau to the Indian subcontinent. It has been a trade route for thousands of years. Salt moved through it, wool moved through it, medicinal substances, and other things that the trade records of the period describe only vaguely. The cliff caves of Mustang were not positioned randomly along this gorge. The high ones, the ones accessible only by rope ladder, were not built at high elevation because high elevation was convenient. High elevation is the opposite of convenient. Carving rooms into a cliff face 200 feet above a gorge floor is enormously difficult. It was done because high is defensible. High is visible. High gives you an unobstructed view of everything moving through the gorge below. These were watching posts. Control of the high caves meant control of visibility over the route. Control of visibility meant knowing who was moving through and what they were carrying. For a long period, possibly centuries, whoever maintained these high caves controlled passage through one of the most strategically important natural corridors, through the Himalayas. That kind of control does not disappear without leaving a record. The record is in the caves. And the caves have not all been opened. In the last 15 years, serious academic work has been done in Mustang. Published findings through the National Geographic Society. Peer-reviewed research. Work that rewrote the academic understanding of trans-Himalayan trade and the complexity of pre-Buddhist cultures in this region. But anyone who reads this research carefully will notice something. Certain phrases appear in connection with specific cave complexes. Always the same phrases. Further excavation required. Dating inconclusive for this section. Significance unclear. These phrases cluster around the high-elevation caves. The harder-to-access ones. The ones that the research notes briefly, without elaboration, showed evidence of more recent disturbance. More recent disturbance means someone was inside those caves after the last known period of organized use, after the medieval monks who left the murals, after the documented burial periods. Someone entered those caves at a time the research does not account for, and the published record does not follow that thread. Why does serious academic research funded, peer-reviewed, and internationally published, stop asking questions at exactly the caves that matter most? That question does not have a comfortable answer. The Mustang Cliff System contains thousands of caves. A significant portion of them have never been formally documented. Not because access is impossible, the hunters access them regularly, but because no systematic survey has been done using modern technology directed at the right locations. Drone photogrammetry can map cliff faces in detail not possible 10 years ago. Ground-penetrating analysis can identify chambers not visible from the surface. Three-dimensional imaging can document interiors without disturbing them. None of these tools have been applied to the undocumented high-elevation caves using the hunter's own knowledge as the map, their ritual geography, their inherited restrictions, their generational memory of which sections of cliff require the most careful approach before climbing. That knowledge is a targeting system. It marks exactly where the unanswered questions are. The hunters have been climbing past these places for 9,000 years. They know which caves matter. They have always known. Put all of this together. A 9,000-year-old practice, taking place on cliff faces containing some of the most significant undocumented archaeological sites in South Asia. Practiced by people whose ritual language directly encodes knowledge about the caves and their contents, who maintain consistent silence about specific locations across generations and families, with no external reason to coordinate that silence. Connected to trade routes that moved unknown quantities of unknown goods through the most strategically important mountain corridor in the region. With high-elevation cave complexes that show evidence of more recent disturbance that academic research has documented and then declined to investigate further. The honey hunters are not just honey hunters. They are the last living connection to something that used these cliffs for purposes that the historical record has not fully named. Twice a year they still climb. They still perform the ritual. They still ask permission from whatever they believe occupies the stone above them. And when they come back down, they bring the honey. They do not bring everything they see. Some things stay on the cliff. Some things have always stayed on the cliff. The cliffs are still there. The caves are still there. The hunters are still climbing. And the silence, that specific, consistent generational silence about specific caves at specific elevations, is still holding. The question is not whether something is up there. The question is whether anyone will ask the right people, in the right way, before the last generation of men who know which caves to approach with the most careful ritual are gone. Because when they go, that knowledge goes with them, and the cliffs will keep their secret for another 9,000 years. If this kind of research matters to you, share this video. Because the more people who know these questions exist, the harder it becomes to leave them unanswered.